you. Thank you. Ah! Thank you. Sit down. So thank you so much for having me here today. I am delighted to be here. Thank you, Bob, for the invitation, and for Roger. Thank you, Damon, for the introduction. I am glad that Rosie laughed in parts of the book. You know, that Damon actually does make a good point. This is my 10th book. Books are part of how I fight. And this is a book that I tried to write to draw in more people, because our fight can't just be our talking to each other. We have got to draw more people into it. And so that's what it's about. It is a book written of gratitude, gratitude to my parents, who never had much, but who always believed their kids were going to do better than they did, and gratitude to an America that invested in kids like me. That's the kind of America I want to see us be again. I believe in that. You know, now, I understand you spent much of the day talking about populism, which I think of as the power of people to change the country. This is something I believe in deeply. In 2009, I was fighting hard for a consumer financial agency that would help level the playing field for families by preventing big banks from pushing people around, from tricking them on credit cards and mortgages and payday loans. Damon was actually one of those. In fact, many people in this room were involved in that fight. And you may remember that the biggest financial institutions were, I was going to say unenthusiastic about this consumer agency. How about dead set opposed? And we're spending more than $1 million a day for more than a year in order to block financial reforms generally, and the consumer agency in particular. That was the targeted one. But we were able to fight back. We were able to fight back because of people like you, people across this country who said, I am in this fight too. And because enough people got involved in this fight, we won. We got a good, strong Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. We got it passed through Congress, signed into law. And you know, for any of you in the room who thought, gee, I never thought I'd be dorky enough to be applauding the creation of a government agency, let me just tell you just one little fact about that Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. It's been up and operational for just a little over 2 years. It has already forced the largest financial institutions in this country to return $3.5 billion directly to American consumers that they cheated. That's an agency that works. That's government that works. Yeah. Now, and our uphill, against the odds, can't win battle for the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau wasn't unique. In every fight to build opportunity in this country, in every fight to level the playing field, in every fight for working families, the path has been steep. Throughout our history, powerful interests have tried to capture Washington and rig the system in their favor. From tax policy to retirement security, the voices of hardworking people get drowned out by powerful industries and well-financed front groups. Those with the power to fight make sure that every rule tilts in their favor, and everyone else just gets left behind. Just look at the big banks. They cheated American families, crashed the economy, got bailed out, and now the 6 largest banks are 38% bigger than they were in 2008 when they were too big to fail. They still swagger through Washington, blocking reforms and pushing around agencies. A kid gets caught with a few ounces of pot and goes to jail. But a big bank breaks the law on laundering drug money or manipulating currency, and no one even gets arrested. The game is rigged, and it's not right. And it's not just the big banks. Look at the choices the federal government makes today. Our college kids are getting crushed by student loan debt. We need to rebuild roads and bridges and upgrade our power grid. We need more investment in medical research and scientific research. But instead of building a future, this country is bleeding billions of dollars in tax loopholes and subsidies that go to rich and powerful corporations. Many Fortune 500 companies, profitable companies, pay zero in taxes. Billionaires get so many tax loopholes that they pay lower tax rates than their secretaries. But they have lobbyists, lawyers, and Republican friends to protect every loophole and every privilege they have. The game is rigged, and it isn't right. The game is rigged. Or take a look at what happens with trade deals. Big corporations, God, for big corporations, trade agreement time must feel like Christmas morning. Well, think about it. They get special gifts they could never pass through Congress out in public. Because it's a trade deal, the negotiations are secret, and the big corporations can work behind closed doors. And we've seen what happens here at home when our trading partners around the world are allowed to ignore workers' rights and environmental rules. From what I hear, Wall Street, pharmaceuticals, telecom, big polluters, and outsourcers are all salivating at the chance to rig the upcoming trade deals in their favor. Now, why are trade deals secret? I've heard supporters of these deals actually explain that they have to be secret because if the American people knew what was in them, they would be opposed. Think about that. If real people, people whose jobs are at stake, small business owners who don't want to compete with overseas companies that dump waste in the river and hire workers for $1 a day, those people without armies of lobbyists would be opposed. Well, I believe that if people across this country would be opposed to a trade deal, then that trade deal should not become law. The tilt in the playing field is obvious everywhere. When conservatives talk about opportunity, they mean opportunities for the rich to get richer and for the powerful to get more powerful. They don't mean opportunities for a young person facing $100,000 in student loan debt to start a life, for someone out of work to get back on his feet, or for someone who worked hard all her life to retire with dignity. The game is rigged. The rich and the powerful have lobbyists and lawyers and plenty of friends in Congress. Everyone else, not so much. Now, we can whine about it, we can whimper about it, or we can fight back. Me, I've decided I'm fighting back. You bet. This is a fight over economics, over privilege, over power, but deep down, this is a fight over values. Conservatives and their powerful friends will continue to be guided by their age-old principle. I got mine, the rest of you are on your own. But we're guided by principle too. It's a simple idea. We all do better when we work together and invest in the future. We know that the economy grows when hardworking families have the opportunity to improve their lives. We know that the country gets stronger when we invest in helping people succeed. We know that lives improve when we care for our neighbors and help build a future, not just for some of our kids, but for all of our kids. These are progressive values. These are America's values. These values play out every day These values are what we're willing to fight for. So let's go over the list one more time, and I want to hear a good, strong amen out there. We believe that Wall Street needs stronger rules and tougher enforcement, and we're willing to fight for it. Are we willing to do that? You bet. We believe no one should work full-time and still live in poverty, and that means raising the minimum wage. We believe that people should retire with dignity, and that means strengthening Social Security, and we're willing to fight for it. We believe that a kid should have a chance to go to college without getting crushed by debt, and we're willing to fight for it. Oh, we believe that workers have a right to come together, to bargain together, and to rebuild America's middle class, and we're willing to fight for it. We believe, and I can't believe I have to be saying this in 2014, we believe in equal pay for equal work, and we're willing to fight for it. And we believe that equal means equal, and that's true in the workplace and in marriage. It is true for all of our families, and we are willing to fight for it. This is how I see it. We the people, decide the future of this country. These are our shared values, and these are the values we are willing to fight for. This is our moment in history. We are called on to determine the future of this country. And if we stand by and let it slide away, then shame on us. But if we get up and we fight for what we believe in, we will head this country in the right direction for ourselves, for our children, and for our grandchildren. I hope you're ready to fight. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, thank you. Thank you.
You want to just field them? No, I'm happy to. A couple questions. Don't all stand at once. Yes.
I'm ready.
In the beginning of your book,
Where are we at?
We're getting you a microphone. Here it comes.
in the beginning of your book, you said you were urged to run for the Senate. You would lose, but the ideas that you wanted to talk about were important to be brought into the American people. I think that your ideas and the ideas of Bernie Sanders continue to need to be brought to the American people, and you should join together to run in the Democratic primaries.
So I appreciate the thought. I am not running for president. But this is really important. We have to keep talking about these issues, and we have to find every platform we can, and that's what I'm doing. Right now in the United States Senate, we've got more than 30 co-sponsors on a bill to cut the cost of student loans for our college students. That's the fight we need to have. We've got a bill right now on minimum wage, and my view on this, we're holding the hearings on bank accountability. You got to stay after these. And on minimum wage, on equal pay for equal work, on student loan debt. Make them vote, make them vote, make them vote. And then those who vote against, let them go home and explain to the people in their home states why they voted against. So right now, I'm going to stay focused on these issues. I think it's critically important, but believe me, I'm going to be as loud as I can. So give me help on it.
We got the mic from West Virginia.
Yeah. My question is actually very specific.
Okay.
Is there any possibility of getting Congress to readdress the exceptions on withdrawals from 401ks? For instance, in my case, I'm making withdrawals so that I can afford to pay for Obamacare. Yay, Obamacare. But I'm going to get hit with a penalty next year because that's going to change my taxable income, even though it's clearly for a necessity. And there are literally millions of people across the country that are tapping their 401ks for things like their mortgage payment, their doctor's bills, Obamacare, all of these things. And then when it comes time to pay taxes, it goes back to the idea that we don't get any breaks, we get the shaft.
So let me start this in the bigger frame. America is in the middle of a retirement crisis, and it's getting worse by the day. And this crisis is brought on by a combination of events. The first one is the disappearance, largely, of the defined benefits plan, so that this has to be about people investing and taking the risks of the market and taking money out when they've got to use it for other expenses. That's part one. Part two is this is now the consequence of an entire generational squeeze on middle-class families. Just think about this. In the early 1970s, a one-income family in America could put away, after they made all their expenses, about 11% of their take-home pay in savings. Think about that. By the early 2000s, the median income family in America had to have two incomes to be able to make the mortgage, the health care payments, pay for the kids' education, and were able to put away, in effect, zero, and were head over heels with credit card debt, second mortgages, and the like. What's happened, and all of this, is the consequence of the fact that wages haven't gone up. A fully employed male today, adjusted for inflation, makes less than his father did a generation ago. Families have done everything they can. They've put everybody into the workforce. They've run as hard as they can. They quit saving. They loaded up on debt. And then they all got hit by the financial crisis in 2008. What you're talking about is fundamentally a problem of there's just not enough money to go around. And you look to your 401k not unreasonably. The difficulty, of course, is we're counting on you to look to your 401k throughout your retirement years. So I want to push this in three directions very quickly. I'm going to sound like a college professor here, but these are things we have to think about. The first one is we've got to address the retirement crisis directly. This is absolutely the last point in our history that we should be talking about cutting Social Security benefits. We need to increase Social Security benefits. That's part one. Absolutely. Part two is we need, and we are starting to, there are some of us in the Senate, to take on the whole question about how to deal with the private savings part of retirement. And I very much take your point and very much will take that back to my colleagues. That is the second part. But the third part is really the core. We have to build an economy here at home again. We can't build a future if we're not making the investments together. Educating our children, investing in infrastructure so that businesses can get their goods and services here in America to market, so workers can get to their jobs. Investing in basic research, in scientific research, in medical research. We know that these investments pay off. And yet, what we've been doing for 30 years is cutting back on those investments. Why? So that we could have a tax system that left more money for the rich and the powerful. And we've got to reverse that trend. We can't do this. So part of the answer on this is going to be, and I know it's not the immediate answer, but it's got to be the long-term answer, so not everyone is in the same circumstances, has got to be that we have got to be willing as a country to say everybody pays into this system fairly. a progressive tax. There's a reason it's called progressive. A progressive tax that gives us the revenue we need to make the investments we need to build real opportunity here at home. So, yes.
Young woman right here.
Thank you. Attorney General Eric Holder has recently changed course on too big to jail, saying that none of the biggest banks are too big to jail.
I'll believe it when I see one in jail.
Exactly. And so, thank you. That effort has been directed at Credit Suisse for helping taxpayers to shelter their assets. But
no, I'm sorry. I hate to interrupt the question. It is not to help taxpayers shelter their assets. It was to help people break the law. That's why they are in trouble, and we've got to call this out. I'm sorry.
No.
You're doing a great job.
Thank you for the clarification.
Sorry.
But I guess my point is, I see this largely as a public relations move on the effort on the part of the Department of Justice. Do you think that this is just PR, or do you think that there's a real appetite to be going after American banks for real malfeasance?
You know, this has been an enormous frustration for me, and that is the lack of accountability all the way through. Damon and I worked together during the financial crisis. And I would say if there was a single issue we pushed the hardest on, it was in return for the tens of billions of dollars that were shoveled in to these big financial institutions, a little accountability. Accountability on where the money went, accountability on the changes that the financial institutions would make, accountability that how they would spend that money in ways to help the American economy. And what we got, and I want to be clear, this is under both administrations, was nothing out of that. This is one more way in which the playing field is tilted. Wall Street has been rebuilt. Has anyone looked at the Dow Jones? But the rest of the economy, not so much. And the Glass-Steagall bill is a great example of that. So you all remember the Glass-Steagall bill coming out of the Great Depression, that we put in place a rule that said, in effect, banking should be boring. That's the part of financial services that should be really boring. Your checking account, your savings account, it has to be walled off from the kinds of risk-taking and investment that happens with hedge funds and on Wall Street and other kinds of money management. Put that in place. And not surprisingly, the financial institutions, the big ones, didn't like it. And they kept pecking at the wall, right? And throughout the 80s and the 90s, they'd get one hole in it and then another hole in it and another hole. And then in the late 1990s, it was repealed, Glass-Steagall. So the idea was, in effect, anything goes. The big financial institutions can be in any financial services they want to be. And of course, we all know what happened. This is happening simultaneously with the moment that the financial institutions had figured out that they could make incredible profits by selling people mortgages that people would ultimately not be able to pay off. It was like selling grenades with the pins already pulled out. It's going to be okay for a while, but then that thing is going to go off. And of course, that's what happened. They also packaged up those grenades and sent them out into the marketplace generally. They were purchased by your pension funds. They were purchased by townships and municipalities trying to finance themselves. So both of these have gone on at the same time. Big financial institutions have taken on enormous risk. Glass-Steagall is gone. They're making great profits right up until the grenades start exploding in huge numbers and the entire economy crashes. So what happens at that point? At that point, the federal government says, we're going to come in and we're not going to let this economy go back to the Stone Age, but we're going to put in lots of money to help support this economy. This was the $700 billion TARP. But the Treasury Department, under both administrations, starts shoveling that money out on a no-strings-attached basis. And when you shovel the money out on a no-strings-attached basis, you have just created too big to fail. Just so you understand, when I say no-strings-attached basis, I come out of a background of teaching bankruptcy law for many years. Chapter 11. when new money comes in, which it often does in failing businesses, it's always on terms that say the old debt gets wiped out, the shareholders get wiped out, the old debt takes a haircut, the management gets fired. That's usually the deal, and they got to come up with a new business plan. That's how you keep discipline in the system, and that's how you make sure the new money will be protected, that they really are going to do something different going forward. This did not happen with the big financial institutions. So right now, what we've got is I've got a bill pending in the United States Senate. My co-sponsor is John McCain and Maria Cantwell from Washington, Angus King, an independent from Maine. And we propose instituting a 21st century Glass-Steagall bill. I say, yep. It would have two effects. One would be just simply one of size, breaking up the largest, because those are the only ones who will be affected by this. It makes them smaller by breaking them apart. And the second is that it makes certain that the depository part of banking, your savings account, your checking account, the parts we must protect at all costs, are very low-risk operations. So I heard somebody ask the question, why? Why was there no accountability for the largest financial institutions? Why can we not move Glass-Steagall right now? Why is it that we have heard one after another of the largest financial institutions in this country admit to breaking the law? And that's what we have to call it, not difficulties in a regulatory apparatus. Breaking the law, laundering drug money, violating sanctions against foreign countries like Iran, the latest, helping people cheat on their taxes by hiding money in foreign countries. And yet, not only does no one go to jail, no one even goes to trial. So this is about accountability, both of the large financial institutions, but accountability for our government, for our regulators, to remind them they don't work for the big financial institutions, they work for us. They work for us. He's going to make me quit. But this really is the central point. Who does this country work for? That's the question in front of us right now. Does this country work for those who've already made it big? Does this country work for the biggest financial institutions who can still hire armies of lobbyists and do? Does this country work only for the billionaires and for the millionaires and for the Fortune 500? Or is this a country that works for everybody else? A country that makes the investments, that say, not only are we going to have a system where we get a chance to build something for the future, but that our kids and our grandkids are going to grow up in a world where every kid gets a fighting chance. That's what I'm working on.
Elizabeth Warren.